Hi, welcome to Madras Academy. In this session, we are going to learn about Java framework. In Java, we have three types of framework. One is Spring Framework, Spring Boot, and Hibernate. Before starting this session, first we will see what is framework, why we need framework. A framework is a structure that provides a base for building application and website. It helps to develop the web application more efficient, and it helps to create a mobile application for different platform, and it's provide many more advantages such as easy to test your code and debug, clean code, that means easy to understand and work, and it reduces redundancy of the code in the project, and it reduces the time and the cost of the project. Simply we can tell work less, do more. That is the concept. For that, we are using framework in our application. Okay. Next, in Java, we are having Spring Framework, Spring Boot, and Hibernate. We will see the short introduction about this framework and what is the advantages and disadvantages we are having here, and how to implement the framework in our Java application. Everything we will see here. Okay, and just I'm not doing any practical session, just I'm explaining the theoretical concept here as an intro, and in next session we'll see the separate Spring Framework, Spring Boot, and Hibernate concept in a practically we will do, and you will be getting some more knowledge in this concept. Okay, so before that we will see the short introduction about this framework. Okay, first we will start the Spring Framework. What is Spring? The Spring is a powerful, lightweight, and widely used in Java framework for building enterprise level application. Before EJP is a enterprise Java bean. Before EJP we used Java bean to develop the web application. But before Spring we used EJP. Okay, so while we creating a Java bean web application, in that we have some lagging in transaction management and security. In that time, EJP was introduced to address this offering service for enterprise level application development. Anyway, it is complicated to create a home page and a remote interface for implementing the lifecycle methods. In that time, the Spring framework was introduced to solve this problem. It is simplify the enterprise level application development by using AOP, POJODI. What is this AOP? AOP is a aspect oriented programming. It is not an object oriented programming, aspect oriented programming. And as well as POJO is a plain old Java object. Okay, it's a POJO class, like that we are calling that one. And as well as we are having a dependency injection, that is DI. And using this concept, we can solve that problem. And now Spring is a open source and it is the alternative transaction for Java API. API means application programming interface such as JDBC, Servlet and JSP. And Spring support a core and as well as web application development. In web is called as a Spring MVC. Spring MVC, that is model view control. Okay, and in that we can create a Spring security also. Okay, including with the Spring data is a part of database access, working with the relational and non-relational data, and it can interact with an Hibernate, JSP, JMS, and more. Okay, we can execute all the concept, but we need to write lots of code. Okay, and we need to add the jar files. Okay, and the project setup is we need to write lots of code in this. Okay, so how to develop this application, we'll see that. And in this tutorial we are going to take the Spring core concept. Okay, not a web application, and we will cover the database JDBC connectivity. Okay, that we will cover here. And for this MVC and as well as Spring security, we'll move on to the Spring Boot concept. In that, we'll learn that one. Why? Because here we need to write lots of code. Okay, but in that application, it's very easy. Okay, right now, the real-time project we are developing using Spring Boot only. So just we will understand the concept here, and whatever the advanced concept we are having, Spring MVC and the Spring security, this and all, we'll move on to the Spring Boot. In that application, we'll see that in a practical session. Okay, but before that, in Spring, in core based, okay, I will teach you how to create the core based application and what is dependencies and how to create the bean.xml file, how to configure the constructors and the property tags, everything in a bean.xml file. Everything we will see that. Okay, including with the database connectivity also we'll see that. But I'm not going to create the MVC framework. Okay, and as well as Spring security. This concept we will do it in Spring Boot. Okay, that is a new one and we have to learn that one only. Okay, so we'll see that. Okay, and before starting the Spring Boot, first we'll see the difference between a Spring and a Spring Boot. What is the difference between a Spring and a Spring Boot? We'll see that. Difference between a Spring and a Spring Boot. Spring is widely used Java EE framework for building application. It is widely used to develop a REST API. The aim to simplify the Java EE development that makes a developer more productive. Here the aim is short line, easy way to develop the web application. The primary features is dependency injection. here the primary feature is auto configuration, and it helps to develop the loosely coupled application. Here it helps to create the standalone application with less configuration. And here we need to write lots of boilerplated code. Here it's reduce the boilerplated code. For Spring MVC application, we need to configure the server separately, but in Spring Boot, it's offered the embedded servers such as Tamcard server. We have Tamcard server, and using that we can deploy the web application very easily here. It does not support for any in-memory database, but here it support the embedded database and the in-memory database such as Hibernate, that is H2. And we need to define the dependencies for the project in pom.xml file, but in Spring Boot, here the pom.xml file is the internally take care of downloading the dependencies jars based upon the Spring Boot requirement. Okay, so here no need to configure separately. Okay, so that is one of the advantages we are having here. And next we will see the core Spring framework. Okay, what are the topics we are going to cover in core Spring? First, I will tell you the concept why Spring. In practically, we will see that. And here you are going to understand about the IOC, that is invention of control or invention of container. Okay, and here we are having two types of container. One is bean factory and application context. Why we are using this and how to implement in our program, everything we will see that. And about dependency injections and about bean configurations file, and as well as how to access the constructor injections, and how to create the JDBC concept. Okay, these are all the topics we are going to do it in a practical session in core Spring framework. Okay, before starting the practical session, next we'll see the Spring Boot. One short introduction about Spring Boot. Okay, this is less configuration to create a MVC web application. Okay, so what is Spring Boot? Spring Boot is the extension of Spring framework that enable the developer to build the standalone application. Spring Boot is a rapid application development. It makes it easier to create and run the Java application. It has simplified the configurations and the setup process. We can give more focus to write a code for an application. It is a open source and it is used to create a microservices. Okay, so before learning Spring Boot, what are the pre-requirements we need for the Spring Boot? What are the concepts we need to learn? Understanding about Java syntax, such as core concept, classes, object, inheritance, interface, and exceptions. These are all the topics we need to learn, and we need the basic knowledge of web technologies and familiar with building tools such as Maven or Grendel. Okay, so these are all the prerequirement before starting a Spring Boot. We have to learn this all the concept. Okay, and next, what are the topics we are going to create in Spring Boot? Okay, first I will tell you the Spring Boot basic and how to create the project in Spring IO tools and how to handle the STS Eclipse tools and about basic dependencies and what is the use of form.xml file, project structures, everything we'll see that while we're creating the project, and as well as basics of Spring Boot applications, and we'll create the expect-oriented programming using Hibernate and how to communicate with MySQL database, and as well as we'll learn the Spring securities. Okay, and for developing these applications we can use the front end such as HTML or JSP. We can use anything. Okay, or else we can use Android or React front end application also. Okay, so in this tutorial I'm going to plan for the JSP. Okay, using JSP front end how to communicate with the Spring Boot application, and in Spring Boot we will communicate with the database with the help of Hibernate. Okay, and we will see the Spring security applications also. Okay, based upon the JSP front end we will see, and while we move on to the Angular or React, in that time if you are creating the front end application using that framework now, in that time we will see the Spring Boot as a backend application, how to communicate and how to store the value from this Angular to MySQL. We'll see that. Okay, next we'll see the Hibernate. What is Hibernate? Hibernate is overcome all the limitations of JDBC. JDBC is Java Database Connectivity. It used to communicate with the database. Instead of that, in framework, we can use Hibernate concept. Okay, to communicate with the database, we can use the Hibernate concept. And it is a framework, is available for everyone without any cost. The source code also available on the internet, and we can also modify that code. We can use that code and we can able to modify to whatever the code we need to modify, we can modify it. Okay, and it is free only, and it support ORM tools, that is object relational mapping, and it support HQL query. HQL means Hyper Query Language. Okay, here we are going to write Hyper Query Language, not SQL, Structured Query Language. In JDBC we are using SQL query. Okay, so here we are using Hibernate query to retrieve the data from the database. Okay, and how to write, we'll see that. And it support auto generation, primary key, and no need to write the try catch block. In JDBC, each and every time if you are going to communicate with the database, we need to write a try catch. But here, without try catch, we can directly communicate. Okay, it's similar to object-oriented concept. Okay, it's very easy to handle here. And it support the Hibernate mapping such as one-to-one mapping, one-to-many, many-to-one. Like this, we are having a lots of mapping concept, and these are all the concept we will do it in a practical session, then you can able to identify what we are doing here. Okay, So that's all. So all the introductions about spring and the spring framework and hibernate, everything is completed. And next session we'll do the practical for this all the concept. Okay, thanks for watching.